How many of you really love to be told that you're doing something wrong? It is one of my favorite things. It lights me up. More like it lights me on fire. Lights me on fire. My lovely wife right here is like, what? You hate that? I do hate it. So here's what I want you to do. Are you willing to do a little experiment with me? All right. Close your eyes. Find your mindful space, whatever that looks like for you. Now, what's going to happen is I'm going to say a phrase, and you're just going to pay attention to how that phrase makes you feel. All right? You are doing spirituality wrong. Okay. Looks like most of you handled that pretty well. Did anybody have any strong feelings about that? Oh, Melissa had some. She's ready to fight. She's ready to fight. Melissa, where did you feel that in your body? Oh, really? In your mind? Okay. So it's not, I'm not up here going to tell you what's right or wrong. It's kind of a clickbait title for my talk today. And as I've gone through, you can see that I have found page after page after page of information that I would love to share with you tonight. I will spare you all of that. It would take probably hours. What we're going to jump into is a story. I'm going to tell you a story about a somewhat young man. Not a single laugh. Wow. Okay. A somewhat young man who was searching for the truth. And in his search for the truth, he found plant medicine. He found breath work. He found Qigong. He found all these modalities that seemed amazing, and he did not know which one was true. And so he had to go and he had to ask the divine. And when he asked the divine, the answer that came up was somatic ecstatic dance. Yes, thank you. No, it's absolutely true. I love it. And what I felt was in my body. And who I asked was myself. So the thing about spirituality is very much we are looking for something outside of ourselves. All too often. Why do we do that? There's many reasons. For many of us here in this community, it is a sense of programming. That's what we were taught. We were taught to look outside of ourselves. We were taught to listen to a still small voice. We were taught to do things in such a way that we would earn some reward somewhere else in some other form, not in this form. And I'm here to tell you, this is the form. This is the divine. And first step I want you guys to think about tonight is remembering your divinity right here and now. Anybody familiar with Matthias de Stefano? Love Matthias de Stefano. My wife is in love with Matthias de Stefano, which is fine. Matthias recently said that the body is a projection of the spirit in this 3D world, so that the spirit can appear as a body here in the 3D. I love that. When he said that, both of us were just like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. That gives so much more meaning to the importance of this body. And if you paid attention to the other speakers tonight, there is a thread. And the thread is how important it is to appreciate and take care of and love this body. Especially if it is a projection of the spirit, of your spirit. Okay, how about the soul? And this one I love. Anybody familiar with the Upanishads? I got one back there. So the Upanishads, I got two, cool. The Upanishads are sacred texts central to the Hindu belief system, okay? Within the Upanishads, there's the Brahman. The Brahman is God, universe, source, the one spirit, whatever you want to call it, whatever resonates for you. And then within each one of us is the Atman, A-T-M-A-N. The Atman is the spirit connected with the Brahman. And when I heard that, I was like, absolutely. Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. I love everything about that. Because if our body is of spirit, and then we are connected constantly to universe, to source, to God at all times, what does that make us? It makes us divine right now. Right now. There is nothing else we have to do. We do not have to be worthy. We do not have to earn anything. We are divine in this moment. So first step that I ask of you tonight is to remember your divinity. Right? Step 2 now is going to be to discover. To discover your purpose here in this 3D, on this 3D earth. Maybe some of you have already discovered that. Maybe you haven't. I'm stepping into mine. My friends that you heard speaking tonight have stepped into theirs. I know many of you tonight are working on that and discovering what your divine purpose is on this earth. So there's a term that is called gnosis. And if you look it up, most of the time gnosis is going to be described as wisdom or knowledge. Instead, the better terminology for it, I think, is gnosis as a divine knowing. It is a knowing from a direct connection with the divine. Y'all see where I'm going here? If you're already divine here and you connect with the divine now, that inner knowing blows everything open for you right now. Gnosis, to some, is the key to ascension. I love the idea that ascension does not mean going somewhere else and achieving some celestial glory, but right now stepping into your divinity in such a way that you create heaven on earth right now. Okay? So that's discover. Discover your purpose and from your divine connection to your inner knowing. Third now is going to be to align. So we've got remember, discover, and align. What is alignment? Well, alignment now, if you're going to accept that you are divine, you have a divine nature, and you are going to discover what your purpose is here, you can now align clearly with anything and everything that you want to do in this life so that it leads you to your best life. And if you don't do something that's aligned, what happens? If you're stepping into this space where you're believing you're divine and you're living from that space, what happens if you do something misaligned? You know it. And you can immediately change it. That feels pretty good to me. So you can align with what's your highest good, your highest version of yourself, your best life. Your best life is aligned with your divinity. Okay? Now, if you step into something that is misaligned, as I said, you'll notice that immediately, and you can make that course correction and get back on track. Why would we not want to be misaligned? Well, misalignment can lead to suffering. I don't suppose many of us like to suffer. I certainly don't. So, unfortunately, and maybe you've heard this in some of the other talks, much of what we do is on autopilot. And when did we learn what we do in our autopilot? When we were very young, from 0 to 5, and then another chunk when we were teenagers. So your programming, up to 95% of what you do every single day is autopilot. How do you step out of the autopilot and into the divine? How do you increase that 5%? Or let's flip it the other way. How do you make the 95% autopilot divine? The only way to do it is to intentionally step into that space and make all of that conscious. Well, there's trouble. The trouble being, our conscious abilities are about 1 million times less powerful than our subconscious autopilot. So has anybody ever gone, oh man, I am so tired of smoking, drinking, staying up late, whatever thing that you want to give up in your life, and you go, I'm gonna quit drinking right now. That's it. That's my last drink ever. And then in a couple days you're back drinking? Because the programming is so much stronger than your conscious desire to change it. So how do you change it? Well, there's a lot of ways. Elena mentioned some therapeutic ways, EMDR. There's all kinds of stuff like that. There's plant medicine. There is meditation. Whatever it takes to step into making your programming conscious. Okay, so anybody familiar with Dr. Bruce Lipton? Man, I love that guy right now. His YouTube videos are amazing. And he's the one that talks about the 95% being programmed. And that doesn't feel good to me. Does it feel good to anybody else knowing that your life is on autopilot for 95%? No. And then when I think about when the autopilot started and how little control I had over that, let me tell you a story. I was 17. When I was 17, I had an intuition. Had no idea that's what it was. It came from my gut, didn't come from my mind, and it said, hey, you ought to be a teacher and a coach. Well, I was 17 in 1989, and so I looked at how much teachers and coaches made at the time, and how did I feel about that idea? Why? Because I had been programmed that success meant you make as much money as you possibly can. You go to high school and graduate with good grades. You go to college and graduate with good grades. Graduate school, get good grades. Then you can get the job that pays you all the money. So I did that. And I did that for 30 years and pretty much hated every single second of it. So at a ripe old age, or ripe young age of 48, I had this awareness, this awakening, and remembered my intuition. Why didn't I understand my intuition at 17? Because my programming from age 0 to 17 was that there's somebody else that will tell me what to do. So I didn't know to listen to something that came up out of my gut. That was just weird. Then when I was 48, 30-ish years later, I was able to go, oh, that's what that was. And I got into coaching. And it has been the most amazing thing I've ever done. Because why? Because it is aligned. Because I listened to my divine nature, finally, 30 years later. Guys, 30 years? Please, Hallie, don't wait 30 years. Hallie's a youngster. She's 20. Jump into that space of alignment now. Woo! Because you're divine. So what is that? Let's jump into what Angela just said real quick, which I love. Angela's talked. Angela has been to our house and taught, and it's just amazing. She said, we're all intertwined, right? So my Atman is connected to Brahman. My spirit is connected to Source. Every single one of you have Atman. Every single one of your spirits is connected to Source. What does that mean about us? It means we are all actually connected. That's the whole purpose of this get-together. The whole idea is to raise the collective consciousness. And since we're all connected anyway, and our spirits are all connected inseparably, you cannot pull yourself out of your Atman and disconnect from the energy and power of the universe. You cannot. So let's look at it the other way. Let's jump in. Let's jump in together. And grow this community and grow each other and take care of and love each other as we would as divine beings. And if anybody ever wants to hang out and talk about this, I am always open. My door is always open. There's nothing more that I like to talk about. And I love every single one of you for being here. And thank you all for coming.